Can you hear me?
Can hear you. Yeah, we can't see you yet.
There we go. We can see you.
So Julie's having trouble logging in.
Okay.
I don't think she has the link.
Okay. I'm sure our team is working with her on the back end, so we're getting her shortly. But how are you today?
I'm great.
Good. We're so glad to have you. And you and Julie are longtime friends, right?
Correct.
Good. Well, I'm sure it's going to be such a great conversation. We'll get her in here shortly. And you're based in Atlanta?
Correct. Yes. But you?
I'm normally based in Chicago, but I'm calling in today from my parents' house in Maryland. I came home for a little while to get a change of scenery and out of the city. So it's nice to have a little more space to roam around.
Is a little while like a week, or you've been there for 4 months and you're staying for the rest of your life?
Yes. What is a while nowadays? Everything is, time is construct. But I was here earlier during quarantine and spent a little time back in Chicago to make sure my apartment was still doing okay. And then came back here just to see my parents again. So
awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure Julie will be in here shortly, but if you all want to kick off the conversation, we can get her in whenever.
Yeah, well, I think so, because as Emily already mentioned, Joanne and Julie are actually friends. We're going to have them introduce each other and hopefully add some color to that. But since Joanne is here right now, it would be great if you could introduce yourself. And then once Julie gets on, we'll have her do that. And then we can get right into the conversation.
Does someone need to call Julie? Somebody from the Brand Innovators team?
I don't think so. I mean, I just used the link that's in the invite.
Yep. Okay, because she called me and I flipped it to her real fast and she couldn't get in through that link.
Hold on.
Hi, guys. So they're working with her right now.
Okay.
She'll be joining shortly, but obviously we would have loved to have you guys introduce yourself. But if you wanted to kick off your own intro, Joanne, I'm sure we would love to hear that.
You know what I'll do? How about you let me go first and I'll introduce her?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
it's showing up now.
What's that?
I see a JB box. So she's awesome. Be here any second. So
hello. Sorry. Sorry.
No problem.
Hi.
It's always an adventure.
Oh my goodness.
Technology.
I know. I don't know why the link was not in my invite. That was the weirdest thing. But the one you sent me, it was in.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that, Joanne.
Oh, no problem.
Great. So we have everybody now and able to do the introducing of each other. So Joanne, you want to kick us off introducing Julie, and then she'll introduce you, and then we'll get started.
Mm-hmm. So will you give me a cue, and then I can...
You're live. I mean, it's happening. All of this has been public, so go ahead and start. Yeah. I'm sure it's very charming. Yeah.
Everyone's seeing this in real time then. The dysfunction.
Well,
hello. Everybody who's watching, we did rehearse this yesterday.
Yeah. So how about this? Start over. I'm Jessie Tarlov, head of insights at Bustle Digital Group. We're a digital publisher reaching over 80 million unique visitors every month. I'm thrilled to be moderating, or really just joining a conversation amongst friends here with Julie Bowerman from the Kellogg Company, Joanne Harold from Honey Baked Ham. These two are friends, and now I guess I would say we're all friends since we've had a casual conversation in public view, which is what happens during COVID. So they're actually going to introduce each other. So Joanne, if you could start by introducing Julie, that'd be great.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you to the Brand Innovators and Jessica. So excited to be here. Today is Thirsty Thursday. Every day I think of a new name for the days of the week. But it's my honor and privilege to intro Julie Bowerman. Julie, first and foremost, is a very dear friend of mine and she's a very good friend. Her husband and my husband are really good friends, and our daughter is a really good friend. But just by way of background, Julie is currently the Chief Digital Officer and Consumer Experience Officer at Kellogg's. She has responsibility for all of Kellogg's online e-com business. Prior to Kellogg's, she was SVP of Hanes Celestial, and which is a food and organic personal care company. Prior to that, she spent most of her career at Coca-Cola. She started My Coke Rewards and had P&L responsibility. In addition to all that, Julie serves on the board of directors for Brixmor and other nonprofits such as 48 and 48 and Other Source. She and her husband Greg live in Atlanta. She loves to travel and spend time with her daughter Riley, and so just so excited to be here with her today. And Julie, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Joanne. Thank you for that very gracious introduction. And sorry, everyone, for a little bit of the faux pas in the introduction, but you get to see the real side of us and not the polished side. So that's probably worth your dialing in for sure. So as Joanne mentioned, she and I are friends. We've been friends for a long time. And I think what makes our friendship really special and why we're here together is that we're both, career marketing leaders, have, high aspirations and achievement for what we accomplish in our careers, but also care deeply about our family, our daughters, a balance in life. And we use each other many, many times to kind of keep ourselves in check and get advice from each other on all the topics that would surround the very similar lives that our both have. To give Joanne, I'm glad I'm following actually Joanne's introduction because her accolades and her accomplishments are very wide and deep. So she is currently the CMO of Honey Baked Ham, where she's returned from a previous tenure at Honey Baked Ham years ago, leading marketing. Prior to Honey Baked Ham, she was CMO, global CMO at Interface, and I think SVP at Arby's for brand marketing. Joanne is also, for those of you that don't know Joanne is incredibly involved in the Atlanta community. She's involved in children's rights and Kate's Kids Club, Joanne, right? She's very passionate about both of those organizations. She serves on the board at the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau. She's participated in Leadership Atlanta. She is a mentor as well to many local marketers who really tap into Joanne for her experience, her expertise, and her, I'd say her passion. And what she'll tell you is her purpose, which is leading with love. And she is, let me tell you, what are some of the things about Joanne that maybe you guys wouldn't know from her resume? She's like really gotten into like getting in shape and working out. She's running, she's Pelotoning, she's boot camping. I found out the other day she's taking tennis lessons. She has an amazing daughter, Lily, who is about to turn 17, who's very accomplished in and of herself. Gosh, I could go on and on about Joanne. So that's my dear friend, Joanne, and the successful person that she is.
I think I speak for everyone on the call when I say that I desperately want to be friends with you. You'll take me in with you. It's a wonderful thing to be part of this conversation today, but I would just like to give a shout out for the fact that I feel like this is something that happens on a panel with women. And I really appreciate the fact that you both not only asked to be able to introduce each other, but are such amazing cheerleaders for one another as not only friends, but as powerful women in our business. And I think it's going to bring great value to the audience today to be having this conversation with people who are market leaders in and of themselves, but also good people. And I love that leading with love, Joanne. That sounds absolutely perfect based on the 20 minutes that I've spent with you. That's how I have felt about you as well. So we're going to dive right in and start with the obligatory COVID question. And then hopefully we'll move away from talking about the pandemic. I'll go to you, Joanne, first. Can you talk a little bit about your company's pandemic approach, what you've been doing the same and what you've been doing differently in your job?
Yeah, so it's dramatically impacted our business. First off, and fortunately for Honey Baked, we were considered essential.
Yep.
So we followed the pandemic all the way through when it was in China and Italy, and we're developing scenarios because our Easter. So we quickly redirected all of our advertising. We did about 3 years worth of work in about 3 weeks, implemented curbside, buy online, pick up in store, redirected all of our advertising, updated our website, executed a lot of safety protocols, social distancing, masks, etc., because our stores get very busy during that time, and e-com is very busy. So we did a tremendous amount and are continuing to do so through the summer and as we prep for our holiday season coming up.
Awesome. And shifting over to you, Julie, Kellogg's has done exceptionally well during this period. And I think that we all remember the mayhem at the beginning of COVID when everyone was searching for toilet paper and cereal, right? We all thought this is what we're going to survive on for the next however many months. Can you talk a little bit about the pandemic approach over at the Kellogg Company?
Yeah, I mean, not too dissimilar from what Joanne, stated. A quick shift in, making sure all of our people were safe and putting a lot of people protocols in around, working from home and how we would handle, employees that had, circumstances of kids at home and school, or, older parents that they had to care for, things that just all of a sudden crept up in kind of employees' lives. And so Kellogg has done an amazing job putting the resources of our organization together to really support the employees and keep employees safe. Supply chain was a bit like Joanne said, really kind of making sure that we could, keep our supply chain up and running, keep the grocery stores stocked in the way that consumers. And then I think similar to probably what Joanne said too, and just kind of our shift in advertising and marketing focus around more, more appropriate type of messaging for the pandemic. You may have seen our global ad campaign that we put out around, kind of thanking the frontline workers. And so that was a big initiative that we took on, that we felt, not necessarily the benefit of Kellogg's, but just as a goodwill gesture, as a sign to say we're all in this together. And so those were some of the big things that we shifted. You're right, like we have as a business benefited from it. I think what's been fantastic about being in the cereal and snacking business is that, particularly in cereal, like there's been a return to at least how I grew up, where I sat at the kitchen table and had breakfast with my family on a school morning, and we had a bowl of cereal and we didn't run out the door and stop at a Starbucks. We sat down together and my mom was in the background, maybe packing our lunches. And, that occasion has returned to households, and cereal has been kind of plays a logical role in that. And so that's been a really nice benefit for our business, but I think really a nice kind of outcome also of the pandemic.
Definitely. And I don't want to stay on this too long, but since you both talked about the transition, have you felt like it's been relatively seamless? Because there's a lot of data out there, and we're seeing from our readers as well that people feel that they're more efficient, and that the transition to working from home, as long as you have high-speed internet and a decent place to sit at a desk or at a table, has been pretty good. Have you found that your teams have adapted well and it's been a positive experience, or are people really clamoring to get back to the office? Joanne?
I think it's been mostly very positive, and we've been very productive. And I know employees are enjoying the extra time, and it's really helped kind of well-being and even the climate. And so it's been mostly positive. There are some, though, that really want to get back to work, especially if they live by themselves. Or so mostly positive, but there's a few that are ready to get back.
I'd say the same for us. Like surprisingly, very productive. That will obviously inform, kind of the ways of working even post pandemic. But I think as it's gotten longer in time that we can't travel and aren't going to the office, I think we're also discovering that it's got to be a balance of working live and in person with also working virtual, and that both play a role. And so I think you'll see, some return of kind of the old ways of working. But I think we'll see this new modern way of working virtually also be a bigger part of the workday.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very hard to take something away from people once they have it, especially when you factor in that wellness time and the time with your families that you're getting. I want to shift gears a tiny bit. And Joanne, you already mentioned the Easter season. And I'm curious to talk a little bit about the holidays, which are coming up miraculously very quickly. It's a big period, obviously, for Honey Baked Ham. How do you think consumers are going to respond this holiday season without the traditional gatherings? What the day after Thanksgiving is going to look like, whether we call that Black Friday or I think Shop Friday is a possibility there. And what is Honey Baked Ham's strategy to make sure that people can still facilitate that sense of gathering and family and community during a fraught period?
Well, we're obviously very focused on that. It's 80% of our business, and we are putting a lot of efforts towards e-com and D2C. We are deep in the throes of planning. As I mentioned, we're also doing curbside and delivery. And so we anticipate that we'll have a good holiday because consumers are craving get-togethers and nostalgia and traditions. So we're focused on that, but we also want to make sure we do so safely and the consumers and our associates are safe as we start to bring in traffic.
Yeah, and you, Julie, and obviously your products are a little bit different than a ham to be shared amongst the families of the holidays, but how is the holiday season, if at all, affecting your plans, whether it relates to, how many products you expect to sell, your marketing plans across, TV, digital, print, any of that, if you could talk about your plans going ahead.
Yeah, I don't know that it's made major shifts and kind of there's anything that we would do differently. I think it's the places in which we're just making sure we are. Like if you think about things like, e-commerce has become, a much bigger part of our business as more consumers are shopping via e-com. And so assuring that not only just from an assortment standpoint, but our marketing communications and media placements sit in some of those places that now consumers are more often participating in is more how we're thinking about the shift.
Got it. And building off of that, which ties in nicely the question that I wanted to go to next, there are a lot of new platforms that have taken on even more prominence in this period, like a TikTok. For instance, I'm curious how your brands are thinking about pivoting to new platforms, if they are at all, or how you're reimagining your marketing strategy to deal with the fact that we're all going to be at home for a while now, or that you might have seen a shift in who could be part of your core audience. Joanne, if you want to go.
Yeah, so we've done a tremendous amount of shifting our media into digital and social and paid. We're doing a lot of content, a lot of video, and we're taking some of our traditional dollars and moving it into where consumers are watching at home or on their laptops. We're looking at Reel. As a matter of fact, we just shot a lot of content yesterday to get into the new Instagram platform. So very excited about that. But watching all of that closely, and especially as we get into the elections too, to see what happens there with inventory and messaging and consumer mindset.
Oh, that's really interesting. Before we go over to Julie, if you could talk about that a little more. I'm a total politics junkie, so I just really perked up when you said that. Can you elaborate a bit more on what you would be watching for around the election and how that might impact your brand?
So we're looking at inventory, media inventory, and what's available. In an election year, the prices go up. We also know or we're guessing the tone will probably be pretty fiery. And so how our brand plays in. And then just, and honestly, we are very nimble. So we're watching the election and what happens with the pandemic so that our tone and our media buys are appropriate for where we are in November.
Yeah. Julie, what about that? Because you already mentioned the big national buy about supporting essential workers and our first responders. Are you guys watching the election at all? And how have you changed in terms of platform strategy during this period?
Well, so I'd say strategically, we always have a portion of our media buy. We're testing new platforms, right? The latest out there just to see how they resonate with consumers and, returns and just from a learning standpoint. So that's always a part of our media strategy, for sure. But I'd say similar to Joanne, I mean, we're going to watch kind of, I'd say two things are going to be really important for us are kind of brand safety. So we're not going to test or place in any places that, have a brand safety risk. That's foundational to every, all of the places in which we're buying media. And then secondly, it's really hard to talk about November right now, not knowing, the status of the pandemic, the sentiment around the election, the election is November 3rd, but will it linger on? I mean, there's so many unknowns. So I think the most important part for us right now is we're just really keeping kind of flexible and agile. It creates a lot of extra work and capacity challenges for our region media teams as a result of it. But it's kind of the world that we're in right now under the set of circumstances that we're faced with.
Yeah, I actually live in a congressional district that still hasn't fully finished counting their ballots from an election that happened over a month ago. So we sort of have a declared winner, and everyone's going about their business as if the congresswoman has won her seat, but we still have mail-in ballots coming in, and it's going to be November 3rd will not be the end of it, I imagine. Yeah. And you both mentioned important synonyms, nimble and agile. I would love for our audience to hear a bit more about how your organizations have been quick on their feet and making changes. I know about the curbside pickup, which is something that we're doing from picking up hams to getting COVID tests. But if you could elaborate on that a little more, Joanne, that would be awesome.
So from March, I think 11 through May, we had daily cross-functional calls. And so much of it was around supply chain availability, safety, et cetera. We don't have daily calls, but we do have weekly calls, even on the marketing promotions, because again, we're and especially in e-com, we almost can't make our products fast enough, and so we're looking at inventory, we're looking at the merchandise, we're looking at supply, and pivoting weekly on promotions, etc. So our teams were used to planning further out, obviously, and our teams have had to really kind of change their mindset and be a whole lot quicker based on demand and supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add to it, because it was similar type of cadences and ways of working. The other thing that we've done, I work in an international role, so I work globally in Kellogg. So we're in most markets around the world, and so one of the things that we've done and instilled in our routines is a cadence to learn from each other, because it's a global pandemic, obviously, and the trends are very similar in a lot of other regions. And so Asia, who, for example, kind of was early into their pandemic, there was a lot that we could learn from what they were experiencing from a business standpoint, a marketing standpoint, how their consumers were behaving. And so we took on a big role of making sure that we were staying kind of connected as a global community so that we were learning from each other, and being able to, kind of adapt and be more flexible, across different regions based on what we had experienced in one region, or another.
It's a big advantage in this, though. Obviously, what's happening in other countries right now is completely different than what's happening here, but at least you knew a bit more about what was to come and to be ready for that toilet paper and cereal moment when it first hit America. I would like to talk a little bit about your core audiences for a second, the folks, that are the diehards for your brand and also for consuming the content you're putting out there. So Joanne, who do you guys consider to be your core audience? And if you do have new consumers, you've mentioned that the e-com business has been doing super well during this period. Who are your new consumers, and what's the plan to be able to keep them after, fingers crossed, COVID is over and we return to normalcy and brick and mortar stores, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Well, our core consumer is a little bit older. It's they're a 50-year-old woman and who has a family and very traditional, but we've really seized the opportunity to attract a new user, a younger audience. And so we're going after a younger millennial mom who loves to serve great food. And so we plan to keep those consumers. We've got a very extensive CRM system. So we keep track of the consumers, and we're very focused on direct marketing to them to keep them into the brand and keep them coming back. So that's one way. And then innovation, new products, new sizes, new offerings, new meal solutions for them is another area of focus.
Yeah, because you guys launched, I think, at the end of June, the meal prep packs that came along with cards that had conversation starters on them that were probably things other than, oh my God, this is so terrible, we've been locked inside. And I've seen some of your meal prep and serve videos, which are super cute. I assume both of those are around to stay, right?
They are. That's an example. We had a kind of a wacky, funny, outlandish campaign, and it's one where we had to redirect our messaging, and we introduced those meal bundles in pretty record speed because we knew consumers were looking for quality food that was easy to serve and something that their families would enjoy. So conversation starters were just everybody's around the table. We need something to do, and so it was a fun kind of PR approach that we took.
Yeah, it's really great. It actually correlates directly to what I found in my own research from our readers around the food category and what they're looking for. So like you said, in targeting these younger moms, like our romper reader, for instance, everyone wants to serve a good meal for their family, but they're also looking for convenience, for it to be quick in preparation, especially when you're working full time and now have your kids at home full time. So we've definitely found that convenience is the answer there. And Julie, I'd love to kick it over to you. Obviously, Kellogg's products like Nutri-Grain bar, for instance, are king of convenience or queen of convenience, I would say. Can you talk a little bit about your consumer? And I've always wanted to know, how are you guys reaching kids safely? So obviously, advertising to children is a whole perilous area where you have to be very careful about where you are and how you're talking to them. So if you could talk about your strategy in reaching kids and moms, that would be great. And dads, I should say, and be fair to everyone in the household.
Yeah. I mean, so, and maybe I'm not going to answer your question. So just
okay. Whatever.
I mean, the marketing to kids is a very quick, easy answer. I mean, we have, policies around, the ways in which we protect, how we market to kids and make sure that it's respectful of their age, consumption behaviors, all of that. So we're very, we're very disciplined about kind of our marketing to kids policies, much like we are brand safety policies. So that's an important part of kind of our standards. But we do, as it relates to just our consumers, I'd say we kind of think more about the space of occasions, and how our products, pretty broad portfolio between cereals, snacks, frozen foods, bars, plant-based meats. So we have such a broad portfolio that we also look across the consumption occasions and the categories in which we participate. And we look for opportunities around occasions to talk to shoppers and consumers around, how they would be consuming, our Cheez-Its and Pringles, for example, versus cereal. And we market into those occasions based on those needs. So we think about it more in that terms necessarily. We certainly have kind of demographics and kind of traditional kind of targets, I would say, when we're looking at media buying, but broadly, we're also thinking about it more in the space of occasions, and how do we talk to consumers based on their behaviors and habits there.
Yeah, I love that. Very quick side note, my father, who's a winemaker, talks about this all the time in his marketing of wine, and how you bring an occasion to life, right? To be part of something special in people's lives, whether it's something that happens every day, that you're sitting around the table having a bowl of cereal with your parents, and that's one of the memories that you have from growing up, or you're celebrating a holiday with a bottle of wine, honey baked ham. The focus on occasion, I think, is really smart, especially as life becomes so much more complicated in this period, that we have to kind of revel in the little things, and also making routines feel more special when we're all caged in the same places now for months on end. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about brick and mortar, which has been facing tremendous challenges for the last, I'd say, couple of decades, really, since the advent of the internet, but it's even more challenging right now. Joanne, I know Honey Baked Ham has over 400 stores. You've talked about curbside pickup as one of your solutions. How are you thinking about brick and mortar challenges long-term after this ends? And has this changed the way that you think Honey Baked Ham should do business in perpetuity, even if we do go back to a sense of normalcy?
Well, our retail stores are super critical to the brand and our brand. And we think of our retail stores as almost the sensory, where you get the full regalia of the brand, and it's brought to life through sight and smell, and our associates with a lot of care. We are, though, again, using the retail stores as distribution centers also for curbside and delivery. But they'll play, our retail stores will continue to play an important part in our brand. We're investing, we're remodeling all our stores. But we also know that e-com direct to consumer is growing as well. So we're doing a lot of investment there.
And Julie, I've actually been in 2 Kellogg's cafes. There was the Times Square one, and then there was one in Union Square where I live. So I've gone in to kind of see what you guys do in those places. And what is your thinking about those kind of whatever brick and mortar you might have? And does this really affect your business, kind of the deterioration of the brick and mortar business? Or if, because grocery stores, I assume, will always be around. But can you reflect on what's going on in terms of your thinking as it relates to stores on the ground, from the cafes to people going into grocery stores?
Yeah, so the cafes really play more an experiential role, and there's only a few, like, that's not
it's all of them.
So the bulk of our business sits in kind of traditional grocery stores, as you can imagine, and food outlets, and that won't change. I think the way in which consumers buy it will, right? And so they are using more online. Our business had pretty significant growth in online buying pre-COVID. Now it's accelerated so much. And so fortunately, we had put a lot of investment into our e-commerce capabilities pre-COVID. And so we really were able to take advantage of it as the pandemic and the quarantining scaled and happened across the globe. So I think that's here to stay. I think you're going to see continued, stickiness in how consumers are using, the Instacarts and Amazon Primes to buy their groceries, is just because it's convenient. And so I think there's a large portion of that'll stay, but it's brick and mortar's still not going to go away. It's still going to play a big part of how consumers buy. I can't even imagine in my lifetime for sure. So it still plays a very important role, as it always has.
Awesome. So we have about 5 more minutes for this conversation before we're going to move to some questions from the audience, and there are already a bunch of them and they look really good. So I want to make sure that we get to them. But as someone who works at a digital publisher, I absolutely have to ask, what do you guys look for in an advertising partner? We talked a bit about brand safety, obviously placement, and Joanne, you mentioned, being a little more thoughtful around the election, also prices go up exponentially during those periods. So what do you guys look for when you're thinking, okay, we have a new campaign out, we've got to get this to market, who do we want to partner with? What kind of perspective are we hoping to bring to a new audience, potentially bringing Honey Baked Ham or Kellogg's, I think, is in most people's lives already. So Joanne, I'd love to hear from you.
So if we're looking for a partner, I'm looking for somebody who brings expertise in a specific area of expertise, but who will push us, bring us forward, who almost knows our business better than we do from a fresh perspective. So, and that we have great chemistry with.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I would agree with that. So the thing I'd add to it is, just given what we've talked about, that ability to be a little more flexible, in movement of placements and movement of content, reporting back to us kind of maybe in a more, in a quicker nature around performance and what's happening so we can adapt. There's so much that we're experiencing that we've never had before. And so I think for us, the partners that are showing a lot of flexibility and agility are, as part of our kind of where the relationships are better working.
Yeah. And I want to, it's funny, a question from the audience links directly to what I wanted to ask as kind of our closing question about the future of marketing and the industry and what you think things look like kind of 6 months from now. I guess if we have a vaccine or not is going to make a tremendous difference in all of that. So Joanne, we'll go to you first. What do you think the future of marketing and the industry is looking like?
Well, I've been in marketing for a very long time, and I think it's changed more in the last year than it's changed in the last 25 years. And Julie was talking about agility and nimbleness, and that's so critical. I think we talked about the dinner bundles that we pulled together. We did all of that, a photo shoot in somebody's house through Zoom, where that would have been a photo shoot with 25 people that might have taken a week. So again, just a new modern approach to being agile and nimble, but having the quality of work. We also know consumers will be at home, and this is a kind of a new normal and cocooning. So how do we adapt to that and continue to resonate? We also know that we've got to be safe, and brand safety is so important. And consumers are looking to brands to guide them. We're not, as consumers, sure where the information's coming from, so they're really looking to brands to do that. So we've become not only food experts, retail experts, but now we're health experts. So, and I think that's part of what will continue to be in the marketing world.
And jumping off of that really quickly, are you looking potentially at new brand partnerships that you wouldn't have expected that you would, especially if you're moving into, becoming health experts? Or is it really just how to play a positive role in people's lives, but not necessarily teaming up with another brand or type of organization during this period?
It's more our internal team becoming very, very knowledgeable, but not to say that, some of this is none of us have experience. So where we need the expertise, we're hiring the expertise. But we've also built our brains on, what the CDC is coming out with on a daily basis, and I wouldn't have done that 6 months ago.
Absolutely. And over to you, Julie, future of marketing. What do you think?
Geez, that's kind of a, I think, and we talked about some of this, like, I think the way in which our product are consumed, there was so much on the go behavior before in consumers' lifestyles. Now it's much more in home. That's going to be a big shift, I think, in how consumers are, how they're consuming. Sorry, my dog is like having a little fit here in the background. So if you guys hear him whining because he wants me to open the door, that's what's going on. I think the other part that's going to be really, that this is going to force, is that we talk a lot about this better integration and planning in the purchase funnel, and in traditional CPG, you've got, brand budgets that sit more upstream with the brands. And then you've got shopper and customer trade dollars that sit closer to where, our sales and account teams reside. And those budgets are typically kind of planned and executed separately. I think more and more, just because of the way now, that this is forced much stronger digital adoption, digital buying, digital, media consumption. I think that integrated planning is good. You guys can hear him.
Happening.
Oscar.
You should bring him in.
I know, he's whining, he wants to go outside the door. Is going to be really important to think about that in much more an integrated way in the way consumers are behaving for sure. And I think that the part that we've talked about is there's just there's a higher degree of fragmentation now, even in media platforms. I mean, if you just think, like, we have a big gaming execution with our snacks portfolio we do every year, and gaming has just accelerated. But gaming is not one platform. It's highly fragmented. It's, there's all different ways in which you can participate in gaming. And so as a brand, really understanding that and, is just going to become increasingly complex to manage through and figure out where your investments are best allocated.
All right. That's a scary and enlightening note to end the prepared questions front on, that everything is fragmented and complicated for the future of marketing. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. This one is for you, Joanne. Are there any plans for Honey Baked to move into other channels like grocery?
Perhaps.
Oh, okay. We got a one-word answer. So I just stepped on something there. And then as a follow-up, are you utilizing third-party delivery services like DoorDash for delivering your dinner bundles?
We are. We're working with DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, you name it. We're working with them.
Okay, awesome. So Julie, start with you on this one. What is your brand, singular, I should say, currently doing in terms of your in-store and e-commerce strategies? So you touched on that a little bit in the brick and mortar question, but if you could expound upon it.
Yeah, a lot. So one is just making sure we're in all of the places in which consumers are buying, so that we've got kind of breadth across retail formats, that we're really making sure that our assortment is in place, and so that we're thinking about, not only our core assortment, but some of our long tail that consumers, that brick and mortar, as they've curated assortment through the pandemic to be more focused on high velocity SKUs. Consumers are using online as a way to get some of their more longer tail SKUs. Our content and our digital shelf is super important. And so, all of the basics around product display and product descriptions, but we've really ramped up our search investments and our search strategies to make sure that, as consumers are looking for Kellogg brands, they can find them. So that's been a big part of our investment. And then the other one I'd say is really kind of helping make sure that as a system, as a supply chain and operations organization, we know how to execute now at scale and speed within e-commerce. because it's become such a bigger part of our business. It's the fastest growing part of our business by far. Some of the nuances of operations. And so we've been working a lot more, for example, with our account teams and that service specific accounts and our supply chain organization, and making sure, right, like that they understand those nuances, and we're adapting to those, as quickly as we can.
Fabulous. Joanne?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, we've actually touched on this a lot for Honey Baked, so I don't know if you want to go deeper on what you guys are doing in terms of your in-store and e-commerce strategy, or if you feel like
we're trying to integrate them so they're one. So spending a lot of time on the integration of both e-com and retail and bringing them together.
Got it. Here's another one from the audience. Julie, what do you see as the biggest future challenge to retail and e-commerce and the biggest opportunity?
Biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is just going to be, I think, the economic shift, right? And making sure, and there's been a lot of discussion in the industry about this, is that, e-commerce can be, or has the potential to be dilutive for retailers and for brands, just because it costs more to operate in an e-commerce format. And so that will, I think, continue to be a challenge, because obviously the adoption, purchase behavior, all of that will stay, and probably stay kind of at a continuated, accelerated pace. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. From an opportunity standpoint, was the question also an opportunity?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the opportunity is just that we're now able to penetrate new households. So it's a great opportunity from a recruitment and adoption standpoint for brands who are trying to recruit. We've seen that through our business, is that a lot of our new buyers are people who have returned to the cereal category, are doing it through the online channel. And so it becomes a really unique way, an interesting way for us to think about it as a recruitment strategy as well.
Super interesting. Joanne? Challenge and biggest opportunity.
Some of the challenges we're seeing right now are shipping and freight, and especially as demand for D2C products increase, and the Amazons of the world are out there. We're seeing big surcharges with UPS and our fulfillment partners. Also supply chain. I think just what's going on with the pandemic, it's created some challenges with supply chain. But opportunities, I think for us, it is to Julie's point, to reach a new consumer, to really, as things have changed so much, to leverage the D2C space.
I see Emily's jumped in.
Hi guys. Yeah, I think we're wrapping up here. We have our next people coming on, but thank you so much for such a great session. It was so great having you guys join us and hearing about your friendship and supporting each other over so many years in your personal and professional lives. We always love hearing stories of women uplifting other women. So appreciate you guys both being here and sharing your stories with us on our stage. And thank you, Jessica, for leading the conversation.
Thanks. Thanks to you both and to Brand Innovators.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Huge thank you to Joanne, Julie, and Jessica for kicking us off today with such a great first session. We're going to head right into our next fireside chat, where we're going to be hearing from Ian Dewar. Ian is the Global Analytics Director of Consumer and Loyalty at VF Corporation, and his session will be moderated by Charlie Wade, the Group Director and Head of D2C for VMLY&R. Welcome to the stage, Charlie and Ian. Hey.
Thank you very much indeed for having us.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Very well. That was a great talk we just had. So hopefully we can follow up strongly as well.
Yes. No, it's always fun when we have people who know each other outside of these conversations to get that on-stage chemistry. How are you doing, Ian? I think you're on mute.
I was on mute, but you could see me talking. So
Yes.
thank you for having me.
Of course. Now we can hear you. All right. Well, I'll let Charlie take it away, and I'll check back in towards the end. Enjoy, guys.
Thanks very
Thank
much
you very much.
indeed. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. As mentioned, I'm Charlie Wade. I lead New York Commerce and D2C for VML Y&R, and I'm joined today by Ian Dewar, Director, Consumer and Loyalty for VF Corp. Ian, welcome. Let's start with, sorry, almost caught you on the hop there as you're about to take a drink. Let's start with, Ian, can you tell us a bit more about VF, please?
Yeah, absolutely. You may not all be familiar with VF Corp as an organization, but certainly you're familiar with our brands. VF is one of the world's largest apparel, footwear, and accessory companies. We own brands such as North Face, Vans, Timberland, Dickies, are our big four brands, and our product is organized into three categories: lifestyle brands like Vans, outdoor brands like the North Face, Timberland, Smartwool, Icebreaker, and workwear brands like Dickies, Timberland Pro, and some smaller brands that many people may not have heard of, Walls, Terra, et cetera, Red Cap, et cetera. And we operate globally across Europe, Asia, and North America. We own more than 1,000 stores worldwide, but we're also available in more than 10,000 points of distribution in North America alone, probably around 5,000 points of distribution in Europe. So we have a big wholesale business, we have a big direct-to-consumer retail business, and we have a big e-commerce business. All of our companies sell direct-to-consumer by email. They don't all have their own retail stores.
That's great. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to start with an interesting question, I hope, for the audience, which is, I always think of your brands as being very outdoorsy, or I kind of think of them as being quite high contact. And obviously, we've had quite a strange year with people not being able to get out and about as much as possible. How's it affected your customers?
I mean, absolutely affected us in a huge amount of ways. It's been an interesting year for VF for sure. The pandemic did remind us of a lot of things, and that time and relationships are really important in our lives. I neglected to kind of talk about the brand purpose from VF in the introduction, but the brand purpose of VF is to power movements of sustainable and active lifestyles for the betterment of people and the planet. And I know I just read that, but it's really has never come to life more than it has in the last 6 months. And as we think about kind of what's important to the company and what's important to our customers and our associates, this commitment to active lifestyles and some commitment to betterment of the planet has been super important. You know, we recognize like social distancing is not a natural act. I mean, for some people it is if you're an introvert, but you know, most people like to connect with other people, to connect with each other, to connect with nature, and to feel good about it. And so the big piece for us as we've shifted, and some of that is in our marketing, some of that in the product we've presented, some of that is in the actions we've taken, is that we're really trying to continue to inspire our customers to go outdoors, to celebrate individuality, and to build something that they can be proud of. And you know, whether that building is building something in their community or literally picking up a hammer and building a deck in your backyard, that's, you know, I think we've really weathered this storm of COVID well, but it's caused a massive disruption in the business. You know, 1,000 stores had to close, but it's allowed us to really lean into this purpose of powering movements of active and sustainable lifestyles, and that is exactly what customers have shifted to because of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Your brands, again, it's quite interesting because I feel like more than a lot of others, like the people who work there really live it as well. So how's it affected you and your colleagues, you know, not being able to get out and about, not being in the amazing offices you have?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, being people first has always been one of the three pillars of VF. You know, our CEO likes to say we're a purpose-led, performance-driven, people-first company. And VF's always kind of thought that way. Recently, the corporation moved to Denver a year ago. I live in Denver now. I used to live in California. And 800 people up and moved to Denver last June and July. And with all of us with the anticipation of moving into a new building, downtown Denver, completely renovated, LEED certified, beautiful building with a climbing wall in it. We were all supposed to move in there in March. And then, no, maybe we'll move in August. You know, so it's certainly changed the reaction to our team here. But I'd say even more than that, VF has tried to keep the corporation and keep the associates together. We paid all of our retail associates for the 3 months our stores were closed. It allowed us to ramp back up very quickly because everyone was still available. But that was a big commitment to keep more than 3,000 retail associates on full payroll for times when the store were closed. I think the other thing that the company has done, which is really in line with getting outdoors, coming back to your question, but is they've created a whole series of activities that can be done solo or in a small group, but that the company encourages. We had an internal webinar. It was similar to this. We had an internal webinar about a week ago on how to prepare to climb a 14,000-foot peak in Colorado, and they had the head of the Colorado Mountain Club come on, and there were more than 100 associates that logged in, and they talked about what to wear, hopefully North Face, but what to wear, what to bring, what backpacks, how to prepare for it. And it was a great way to kind of virtually bring the associates together. We are very much an outdoor, but also an engaged brand. It's hard to we can't not to get together both with our colleagues, but also with the customers. So that's been a big shift for sure. But I think I really think VF, and especially the brands that are leaning into making product that people want during COVID, are going to come out of this better than we went into it.
That's really interesting. So I want to kind of focus now on very much your area of expertise. Everyone, I think, on this call knows the value and how important data is, but sometimes how you use it is a little bit less clear. And we often say that the best operators are the ones that think in terms of data creation as opposed to just data capture. What does that actually mean for you and for the organization?
Again, coming back to the VF family of brands is built. Like, we build product for people to use, but we also build product to inspire people to explore the world and celebrate their individuality. And one of the things that has always been true at VF is that we want our customers to buy and use our product. We don't build product that has a deliberate expiration date. The idea that you would buy a jacket from us and need to buy a new jacket 2 years from now has never been in our DNA. We have a lifetime guarantee on workmanship against the product across all of the brands. And so the idea that we just build and build to sell, we really build to use. So from a data perspective, I believe it's far more important what our customers do with the product we sell them than what they actually bought or paid for it. And so with, by that, we really look to create some level of predictive model. I mean, I work in marketing, I work in data and analytics. We build propensity models to buy, we build next best product models, we build product recommendation engines. And, the idea is, yes, our intention is to sell more product, but to sell more product that our customers can use, and not just product that there's not going to be an ad that says, our new thermoball jacket now available in burnt orange, this season's hottest color. Like, if you own it, you don't need it. And so for us, where data becomes super important, and the behavioral data really is the kind of linchpin of that, where the behavioral data becomes super important, is because customers can use our product for different end uses. Let me use the North Face thermoball jacket as an example. It's a mid-weight insulated jacket. It's made with synthetic insulation. It compresses down to like the size of a softball. And you might not know what softball is, but
I do. Don't worry, I do. It's a fake game, but I get it. It's okay.
A grapefruit. Let you get a grapefruit. But so it's and it's a lightweight, compressible synthetic jacket that's a great piece for layering if you spend time in the high mountains. Especially in bad weather, but it's also a great jacket for walking to work in the fall, or traveling on an airplane, or standing on the sideline as your kid plays sports. And so what happens is as a customers buy thermoball, and take a customer who purchases thermoball from us, we know they're male, we know they're approximately 35, we know they live in New York City. Well, the next best product for them could be anything from a high performance hiking boot, to a backpack with a laptop sleeve, to a merino wool travel t-shirt. And we really need that behavioral data to make that recommendation, so that, you know, again, come back to the idea, we want to fill out your closet with things you can use. So we're recommending product that the customers might not know we make, but will enhance their experience versus someone else's. And that's always been super important to us. You know, it's true across Timberland with their yellow boot, a very iconic product. It's true across Vans with their skate shoe. You know, I'd be naive to suggest that everyone who buys a skate high shoe from Vans is going to use that to go skateboarding in a bowl in the next like 5 days. So as we understand kind of that behavior behind it, you know, it helps us continue to increase our relevance with our product. You know, one thing that I always think about with marketing is that it's always better to talk with your customers than to talk at your customers.
Absolutely.
And people are way more likely to respond to things they're interested in.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I'm interested though, you talked about how strong you are as a D2C operator as well across all of your brands. You mentioned it in your intro. How far do you think being a D2C brand has helped you to build out that understanding of data analytics, but more importantly, customer behavior?
Yeah, you know, being D2C led opens up a much larger set of customer data than we would if we were just a wholesale partner or sold only to third-party wholesale locations. But the flip of that is that being unibrand in most of our stores really only gives us partial visibility into customer shopping behavior. You know, if we were REI or Dick's Sporting Goods, who are big North Face and Smartwool retailers, or maybe Journeys, which is a big Vans retailer, you get a much better understanding of the customer's full buying behavior for sport or for outdoors. And since we only sell part of what's needed for many activities, we don't have that full repeat visit visibility. I think being D2C led is awesome to start to collect that first touch of customers. You know, they've come in the store, we're able to, or they've come to our website, we're able to collect some data against them. We know who they are. We can even ask them some questions. But what we have to do is take that one step further and really start to get that additional behavioral data and why it's so important. Again, a good example, if you wanted to go camping next weekend, and if you lived in Colorado, all the campsites are booked, but you know, you might be able to get a campsite in September, but you want to go camping next weekend, you could not buy everything you needed from the North Face. We make tents, we make sleeping bags, we don't make sleeping pads, we don't make stoves, we don't make pots and pans, we don't make flashlights. And so all of the things that you need, you're going to have to go elsewhere to complete that purchase. And so for us, it's super important that if we think you're going camping and you've given us the sort of insight that you like camping, that we show you what we make that would make your camping experience better. We show you the right tent or sleeping bag for where you live, the right type of backpack for carrying your gear, and then allow you to discover the rest elsewhere. You know, coming back to this behavioral data, and we're very deliberate about it, but that's one of the reasons we created the VIP Rewards program at North Face about 6 years ago, and then Vans Family Rewards program, a loyalty program at Vans 3 years ago, was we wanted a mechanism where we could ask our customers to tell us more about themselves, but also say reward them, give them some incentive or benefit from doing that. And both have been great tools for you know, asking our customers to tell us more about themselves.
Absolutely. I think we'll probably touch on some of those areas as we go through the next section as well. But you know, one of the things that we've found, obviously, in the last few months is the coronavirus has turned everything a little bit upside down. We still do believe, and you and I have spoken about this, we do believe that some of these things are kind of happening anyway. We were seeing some vague trends coming through, albeit that the last 6 months may have changed them, accelerated them, or whatever it might be. So there's a couple I wanted to touch on with you and get your insight across the major brands there. So the first one really is e-commerce. And I think that even in the last segment, they talk quite a lot about e-commerce. What sort of changes and what differences have you seen coming out of the last few months, and what do you think you'll continue to see?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a huge increase in online traffic and shopping. Right? I read somewhere recently that the amount of online shopping behavior today is in line with what was predicted 3 to 4 years from now. And I'll tell you, you know, we have relatively aggressive growth goals, and we are at a level that is 3 years out. We're at a 2023 level of e-commerce behavior right now, so which is awesome, of course. It also, with the stores being closed, there's some migration, but it's forced people to learn how to shop online. And I say that, I think probably this audience is very versed in online shopping. I think the peer set that I engage with are very versed in online shopping, but there's 150 million families in the United States, and not all of them buy online. And yet as stores close, it forced people to really kind of reconsider and to some extent learn that or try new things. I'll be honest, I haven't tried grocery delivery in like 10 years. I ordered from Webvan. That dates me. That's how old I am. I ordered from Webvan the first thing up before went bankrupt in eCom 1.0. And then I didn't order it because they crushed my bread and the tomato was squished. So I tried grocery delivery for the first time in 10 years. And so it's, there's clearly trends across that. I think the big thing that we've seen and are benefiting from is more deliberate purchasing. People are buying things they quote unquote need. You don't necessarily need a pair of comfy slippers, or a new sweatshirt, but luckily we make that. They're buying things they need. They're buying products for solo and small group activities, which again, we make a lot of that. And they're buying more comfortable apparel, casual apparel, and equipment that can be used. The useful equipment. Again, not like we sell things you don't use, but things that you would use right away. A tote bag to take your kid's stuff to the pool versus a technical backpack for ice climbing, as an example. And so with that shift to deliberate purchasing, we're really leaning in as much as possible with our marketing to show people product that is fun, that we think they're going to enjoy wearing, and that meets a need, especially if that need is either running around your neighborhood or sitting in your house on a Zoom call for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, well, a pair of slippers is pretty important if you're doing that. I'm sure your sales have done quite well recently. I mean, I think that, the classics and follow-up in many ways, when we talk about e-commerce is what does happen to the store. And of course, we know that a lot of stores have been closed. I'd love to get an idea from you of what you think what future the store will be. What have you seen happening? What's the role of it within VF, and what are you hoping will come next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I said, we closed all our stores on March 15th. We continued to pay our associates, so ramping them back up in early June was easier than I think some retailers had. But we were able to reopen almost all of our stores. Now I think all of them are open. With some of them have a little bit of localized COVID concerns, so they have less hours. But we're back open, and we've implemented pretty major safety requirements in the stores, including masks for all associates, social distancing markers for the cash wrap, limiting the number of customers in the store. But even more than that, I think the biggest impact is this shift in shopping behavior, coming back to customers being more deliberate. Not only are they more deliberate in what they're buying, they're more deliberate in how they're buying it. And so things that were potentially available even a year ago or 2 years ago that weren't in high demand, like buy online, pick up in store, localized inventory on the website. We didn't have curbside pickup until recently, but we've implemented that. And so traffic is down. Combination of people being nervous and uncertainty about what's even open. So there's less people out shopping. So conversion is way up. People are coming in the store and they know what they want, and even more so, the customers know what they want before they got there, and they've already done that research. And so that shift in shopping behavior and that access to information, we've been trying to tell our customers for the last couple of years, you can buy online you buy online, pick up in the store. You can ship to the store from our e-com site if you also want to pick up something we sell. We can order from one store and have it delivered to your house from another store, but it wasn't really taken advantage of because people didn't feel like they needed it. Now that it's become a bigger necessity, people started, we pushed up that availability, but they started to take advantage of it. And I think in the past, we used to say omni-channel meant we needed to meet the customers wherever they wanted to shop. We had to have inventory available online, in store, on the app. We had to have our promotions the same. You couldn't have 30% off in store and 40% off online. That wasn't there, right? You know, omni-channel was meet the customer where they want to shop. But really, what omni-channel means is that the customers are using all these channels simultaneously or sequentially in their shopping journey. We don't have retail only, e-com only, app only customers. We have customers who open their laptop and look at what we have in the store. They create a basket and push it to their app. They go in the app with a basket pre-created. They talk to the associate about what they want. And so all of a sudden, omni-channel isn't buy anywhere. It's literally information everywhere. And so this shift in omni-channel and this you know, this idea that people aren't going to go backwards. Like people aren't going to a year from now close their laptops and be like, I don't need to look online for stuff anymore. I'm just going to go to the store and see whatever they have, right? Like we've provided this level of information. The new omni-channel is not buy anywhere. It's have access to information everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a fascinating area. I mean, I think we're seeing some brands, sneaker brands particularly, are really kind of embracing using digital in-store and offering kind of almost fully digital checkout experiences without ever having to talk to someone in the store. And then at the same time, we're seeing other brands looking at their stores almost as like mini distribution centers placed strategically around in key urban areas. It's a really sort of fascinating time for what the model is that companies bring together. But sort of almost shifting away from that, you know, quite a lot of what we talk about, you know, when we work in commerce specifically is about buying, clearly. But brands need to think beyond the buy button, don't they? You know, the time of sort of transaction only. So what does that mean? I feel like it's something you're doing quite a lot of, but what does it mean to VF and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, community has always been an important part of VF and especially for big brands like North Face, Vans, Timberland. And we've always thought of our customers as part of the kind of broader brand family. You know, to the point that when Vans launched their loyalty program, they called it Vans Family. And the idea was we want to, as I said, inspire and encourage our customers to do more with their product. And so as COVID forced this shutdown, we really started to think about, like, what can we do in our local communities to encourage and inspire people to do the activities, even if they're not buying the product from us. To the extent VF has a relatively large charitable arm. We committed more than $1 million across the United States to organizations that we already worked with that do outdoor participation, youth enablement, et cetera, so that you know, we understood that those programs may have trouble raising money. We wanted to make additional funds available. But we also went back to our customers and said, you know, what can we do that isn't necessarily focused on getting to buy something, but more do something? At the North Face, we went back and relicensed a lot of our historic video library. We have a massive, extensive film, film, video, like online video. They're not videos, but, you know, online film library that have adventure films, you know, from 3 minutes to 45 minutes, and we relicensed most of them. Rapidly put together a website, sent emails and social posts out that said, hey, if you're stuck at home, don't know what to do, watch, you know, get inspired, think about your next trip for when COVID is over. And then we worked on deliberate marketing to show people products they could use now, and even some how-to videos for things they could do at home by themselves or in a small group. Across VF, we launched our first responder and healthcare worker discount program. Dickies was already well positioned to make PPE for healthcare workers, so we ramped that up dramatically. You know, it wasn't possible for North Face, say, to pivot to making masks immediately, but we recognized that the people who were working through the whole COVID pandemic and continue to work, like they're eventually going to want to do something outside of their jobs. And how can we help them and by giving them North Face, Vans, Timberland product at a better price, so that when they were ready to kind of take a bit of a break, they had that product. We launched a summer base camp program for kids at the North Face. It was a series of 6 educational videos. They're still online, so if anyone wants to check them out, go learn how to make a peephole camera or snacks for your kid, or set up a base camp in your backyard. But the idea was, hey, we know, and I'm the same. I have 2 kids. Their summer camps got canceled. Like I've been scrambling for stuff to do, and you set up a tent in the backyard, at least it keeps them busy for 2 hours. So we, we built that program. At Vans, they pivoted it a little bit different and created a program called Foot the Bill, which I think is an awesome idea. What they did is they used their custom shoe infrastructure to reach out to more than 100 of their local partners, whether that was music venues, skate shops, clothing stores, mostly small, independent-run, family-owned businesses that were forced to close. And they said, hey, design a shoe, we'll sell it for you and give you half the money. We promoted it through Vans website, through the Vans Family Program. They promoted it, and every shoe that got sold, we gave half the money back to the business. They didn't have to stock anything. They didn't have to carry anything. They didn't have to deliver anything. All they had to do was like tell their customers that buy it, we'll ship it, and you can wear it. And that program has been awesome. So.
It's absolutely amazing. I love the Vans example in particular. I think it's great. I mean, just one final ancillary question, if you like, to this area. I mean, how important, as someone who understands the way that people behave and what they do and so on, how important do you think it is for brands to continue doing this kind of thing? Some of it will be community outreach. Some of it will just be talking to their customers in a way that's more than just products. How important do you think it is?
I mean, incredibly important. Customers have more access to information than they have ever had before. They have more choices for shopping than they ever have had before. They have more ways to pay. There's more options out there, and younger customers are showing themselves way more willing to switch brands. And so for a brand to really think about the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, lifetime relationship, that to me, building this community involvement and letting your customers know you're about more than just selling them something that they're going to give away, throw away, get rid of in the future is incredibly important. So I don't anticipate that changing at all across VF, but I think smart brands are going to do more of that, and as they should.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to kind of go to an area that I think everyone loves. Everyone quite enjoys a prediction. So I wanted to ask you some of yours, so a couple of predictions in particular. What do you think is going to happen to retail over the next 12, 18 months? Maybe less so from a VF perspective. What do you think is going to happen in retail?
So customers definitely want to shop again. I mean, we've seen that even with lower traffic at retail, customers want to get back out and people like new things. People are doing new activities. They want to be able to buy for it. I think this sort of concept of deliberate shopping is going to continue to grow. People are going to be better educated when they come to the stores. And even if COVID goes away, even if customers aren't, I would say, afraid, concerned about being in public, I think deliberate shopping will continue to increase. I think people are more likely to buy what they need this weekend or next week than plan super far in advance. I mean, COVID has certainly shown us. Everyone thought, May 13th, everything was great. And by May 20th, everything was closed. And so, I think people have learned from that experience, and they're going to think about, buy and use versus buy and hold for the future. So this deliberate shopping piece is only going to increase. I think activity-based travel and tourism is going to, not only has it rebounded, but it's going to continue. I read Airbnb had their best June ever last month. Now, if you're, I'm not in the investment business, but apparently their IPO is back on the market. So, Airbnb has responded, and people are saying, hey, if I can't go to Europe, or I can't go to Mexico, or I can't get on an airplane and go to Disney, I'm not going to cancel my vacation. I'm gonna pivot and do something closer to home. And so the activity will continue to increase for sure. Brands like ours that make hiking, running, trekking, backpacks, tents, will benefit from that. But brands that can also bring in the products you need to support this travel close to home is going to continue. And then I think people want some level of interaction, and as concerts and sporting events change over the next 6 months, I saw a picture yesterday of a festival in UK actually where they set up individual platforms
Yeah.
So groups of 4 to 6 could watch a live show separated from other people. And why not? You know, if you've ever been to a concert where you were crushed at the front of the stage, you might think a little separation wasn't a bad idea. And so as things like sports, concerts, theater come back, it's going to be different. You know, people will plan more ahead for that and less ahead for what they want to buy. So I think there's tremendous opportunity in this deliberate space.
Absolutely. I mean, funnily enough, the biggest miracle about that concert was that the weather held out, given it was in England. Normally expected to hammer down with rain as you're planning something like that. So that was good news. Look, lastly, from my questions, I always like to end these things on a bit of hope. And I kind of want to ask you a question about what good have you seen come out of this? You know, what have you looked at over the last few months and said, look, it's been pretty brutal for everyone. It's not been that much fun, but you know what? This thing was quite nice.
I mean, I love the amount of activity, right? Whether it's hiking or running, which our company benefits from, or cycling. I personally like cycling a lot. We don't make any bike stuff at VF aside from some cycling socks at Smartwool, but cycling has exploded. I live in Colorado, but you live in New York City. I've read about bike shops in New York City that literally have no bikes. They've sold their whole summer inventory, their May to September inventory by June 1st. And so people are riding bikes, people are pulling their bikes out of their garage and fixing them up, people are taking their kids hiking, and to me that's great. You know, anything that encourages people to get outside, be active, and then take advantage of their surroundings is super important. Colorado, again, I saw recently that the city of Denver's committed $7 million next year for cycling infrastructure development, because so many people are riding bikes. Colorado Department of Transportation has committed somewhere like $30 million across the state. And typically when you think about, you know, encouraging activity, whether it's hiking, running, cycling, you have to build the infrastructure and people come to it. Well, this is the opposite. People are doing it and cities are responding and saying, wow, we need more bike lanes. We need more access to parks. We need more trails. And they're developing them, and that is awesome. You know, I think certainly when people can go back to football games and baseball games and concerts, that may slow down a little bit. But, you know, the nice thing about it is like cycling, running, hiking, it's fun. You know, and it's energizing. And if that's allowed people to rediscover something they haven't done for 10 or 20 years, awesome. So that to me is you know, some level of silver lining coming out of this is that it's allowed people to make a closer connection to their local sort of environment, and then also a broader nature in general.
That's fantastic, Ian. Thank you so much. So those are the questions I had. However, there are a good few here in the chat. So I'm going to open with quite a big one for you, but it does definitely play into the idea of future facing. So we have one from Isabel that says, what do you see as the biggest future challenge to retail and e-commerce? And what is the biggest opportunity? Yeah, it's a pretty big one.
I think brand switching is probably the biggest challenge. I think this access to information and continuing to be relevant. You know, I think as customers, you know, customers have now been exposed to more online tools, and you know, it's pretty easy to go from website to website, right? If you're looking for literally anything, you're looking for a part for your car or a piece for your bicycle or a insulated jacket, you don't have to drive all over town to check 4 stores. You can go to 4 websites, and as people start to see how easy it is to do comparison shopping, they're going to continue to do that. You know, I also think that this has brought an audience into e-commerce in a much bigger way. So you know, the challenge for brands is one, to stay relevant for your customers, but 2, give them a reason to come to your stores. And you made a great example of how stores are pivoting to be a whole combination of showroom, DC, pickup location, all of that, and I would add inspiration location. You know, the point of stores really should be to inspire people to love your brand. So the store represents the optimal representation of what the brand can be. And then you go online. You can't touch a shoe online. You can't like feel a rock climbing wall online, but you can do that in a store. And so as stores start to really build that and say, here's what you could experience. Put a ramp, maybe not a ramp, maybe a skate ramp in your store is a bad idea. But, you know, put a rock climbing wall in your store. We have in a few of our stores, we have these footbed testing zones, which are literally a bunch of rocks and concrete that you walk over to see how your foot feels with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, put a cold room in your store, and that to me is that really shift. So you know, that for sure, keeping customers is probably the biggest challenge. But if you ask me what the biggest opportunity is, I would say it's the same. You know, the opportunity now is to really prove to your customers why you're relevant for them.
That's great. I mean, I think that, as I said, you're such high contact brands. I would say an awful lot. We've got two absolute zingers in the last couple of minutes left. So this one I think is great from Karen. So what are the biggest surprises? What were the biggest surprises coming out of this last few months? And you can kind of answer, she's given, I think, the option here, like what was good and what was bad. So what did you learn that you thought, God, that's really interesting, we can take it on, or, you know, we need to learn from that?
You know, I thought the initial slowdown in shopping would be larger. You know, that definitely surprised me. You know, I think that the you know, yes, there's been a shift in products that people sell. You know, I'm not that there's anything bad about this, but I'm glad I'm not in the tuxedo or leather shoe business right now because people just aren't using them. So you know, that's been. But I say I was surprised by the speed with which people say, I don't use the word pivot again, but switched their interest. I can't go to the gym. I'm going to buy a pair of running shoes and start running. You know, I can't go to sporting events. I'm going to take my kid to the park. I think the level of optimism, and I think this is true of the American consumer in general, the level of optimism that allowed people to continue to shop and then buy something different has been really encouraging. You know, I think people could have holed up, they could have hoarded toilet paper and flour and pasta and just sat in their house and said, well, you know, I'm not sure what 6 months from now or 3 months from now is going to bring, so I'm not going to spend any money. I'm going to save all my money. I'm going to shut myself in and bake my own bread. But instead, people said, hey, I still want to do something. I can't do what I used to do. I'm going to do something new. Or in the case of cycling, rediscover something they did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But you know, that level of optimism has been really encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. Testing the old adage about learning, never forgetting to ride a bike. So this last one I think is really interesting from Mike. So today brands seem to be built from experience up, whereas the old ways was advertising down. I mean, I think actually you might think it's a bit more of a linear situation. So you've got different touch points with equal weighting, but nonetheless, it's a good way of looking at it. So what are VF doing amongst the brands to create digital, virtual and commerce experiences that are amazing? So I think you can probably pick on any of those you'd like in the last couple of minutes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example I used of the summer base camp is a great, or the online film festival is a great example of that. But you know, you're right that the kind of building community in the past was massive broadcast, and then almost like blunt force people into your store. Whereas as today, it's more like giving people an emotional reason to connect with your brand. I see Emily. I think she's
yeah, you can finish your point. I'm just popping back in.
It just appears up to kind of wrap you up. It's sort of quite an ominous thing, I must say. It just turns up in. Keep going there, please.
Yeah. So I would say this emotional, you know, creating an emotional connection and giving your customer a reason to care about you. And that's not, you can't just do that with, you know, stores and organic social. Like advertising is not going to go away. But I think advertising is going to change to a level where brands, some brands do this are great at this already. But brands are really going to tell and should be telling more authentic stories about how people can use their products to make their lives or their community or their family better. And that's the brands that succeed. And I think I said this earlier, but you know, I was struck by, and maybe Mark Cuban said this, like the companies that come out of COVID that are the ones that relate to their customers and to their employees the best during this time and offer support. And people are going to remember that. And so to me, anything that you can do to continue to build this emotional engagement and be willing to say, you don't have to buy from us, just use it. We have an initiative next week called Walls Are Meant for Climbing from the North Face, which is all about encouraging people to learn or go rock climbing. We don't make harnesses, we don't make shoes, we make T-shirts. But I mean, you can rock climb in any T-shirt. That's not a commercial exercise for us. It's a emotional exercise for us to encourage people to do something, and that's amazing. That for me is probably the biggest output of this.
That's amazing. Ian, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for listening and the great questions. Thank you indeed. Emily, back to you.
Yeah, thank you both so much. Really, really appreciate you all taking the time to join us. I loved all of your conversation and hearing your points about how, shoppers are a lot more intentional when they're coming to the stores, because I think some of the days of just browsing might be behind us now, where you just go to the mall for fun. So it'll be interesting to see how things transpire. But thank you both for joining us today, and we hope to have you back soon on our virtual stage.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the invitation.
All right. Well, we're headed into our last session of the day. Last but certainly not least, and we're going to hear from Seth Goldman, who is the co-founder of Eat the Change and Plant Burger, the co-founder of Honest Tea, and the current chair of the board of Beyond Meat. And this session will be moderated by Ryan Dietert, the CEO of Influential and a good friend of us at Brand Innovators. Welcome to the stage, Seth and Ryan.
Thanks so much, Emily. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Hey, Seth, can you hear us?
Hey. Yep, I can hear you fine. Good to be with you.
Good. Oh, there's your video. Great. Glad to have you join us. And I'll kick it off to Ryan to let you guys start your live cast.
Thanks, Emily. Seth, how's Maryland treating you?
It's rainy today, but overall it's going fine. We're building a new brand here, and I got to say that the best antidote to what's going on in the world is creating something new.
Collaboration is the reason for living. So I'm 100% aligned. Great to thank you for making time for us today. And I'm going to start off by kind of bragging about you a little bit, so everyone knows, as Emily mentioned. But in addition to being the co-founder of Honest Tea, which you sold to Coke, you came from Harvard and Yale, the chairman of the board of Beyond Meat, and now you launched Eat the Change. How did you do this? And tell the brand marketers maybe about your journey, how you became obviously very successful.
I think of myself much more as a activist than an entrepreneur. And, for me, these enterprises are just a way to act out on the things I care about. So I appreciate your kind words, but for me, this is, there's causes that I'm working on, and it's fun to be creative and feel like you're going after something, especially to feel like you can make some progress. That makes it all worthwhile.
Sure. Well, speaking of being an activist, so when did you focus on climate change as both an existential risk, obviously planetarily, but also as a market opportunity? Is that something that is that from the very beginning? Is that in the last few years? When did that happen? And how big do you think this you see plant-based market to become?
I really feel like I've been working against three main causes for my whole career. So one is health. Can we create, and really we need to direct the American diet towards healthier. And so how do we get healthier products available in a way that's accessible and democratized? The other big issue is sustainability. So obviously climate and the way we interact with the earth and the planet are critical. And then the third one is social justice. How do we find ways to extend economic opportunity to communities and to people who haven't had the same kind of access? And so for me, all three of those things have been intertwined. And, sometimes one of the issues gets more dialed up depending on the business. And what we're trying to do with Eat the Change, as well as Plant Burger, this new restaurant chain that we've launched, is really go after, especially climate, actually going after all three issues. But, once again, trying to sort of do a 3-for-1.
Nice. And how big do you think the market is for this? Obviously, the Plant Burger, for those, maybe you can explain a little more about what that is. So it's obviously a kind of a QSR type model, which is under the umbrella, from what I understand, of Eat the Change. How big do you think this is something where there's some sort of inverse, that eventually in the next 20 years that this becomes the standard and that meat becomes kind of a delicacy? I guess, what's your thought?
Yeah, well, it is. It's, and this is the way we thought about it Beyond Meat when we put together the IPO. We looked at, or before the IPO, really, we looked at the business opportunity. We thought it was having plant-based dairy, where plant-based dairy at the time was about 13% of the overall dairy category and growing much more quickly, whereas, animal-based dairy was contracting. And we said, well, that's at least as big as what we think the meat category can be. And so, and obviously, I actually believe it can be much higher. What's interesting now is if you go to a Whole Foods and look at plant-based dairy, or look in the dairy section, you'll see over 50% of their offerings are plant-based. So that's a pretty high ceiling. And I believe that, you can look across all different categories, and where there's animal-based analogs, I think over the long haul, I think you should expect every category to show 20% plus plant-based share. And so whether it's, what we're doing in a restaurant like a burger chain, or what we're doing with Eat the Change, which is going to be a food, packaged food brand where we can replace animal-based analogs with plant-based products, I think that's the kind of scale, which of course is enormous.
And obviously, you were part of the IPO for Beyond Meat. That's an amazing accomplishment. Obviously, that kicked off a number of things that have happened since then in the marketplace. You may be slightly biased, but is it undervalued? Is it overvalued? Do you think it's kind of right where it needs to be? Like, what's that look like?
I can't comment on stock price. I'll start putting myself in those challenging positions. I'll just say that, I'm a believer in the long-term proposition. I got involved with the company when sales were under $1 million, and it's just been fantastic to see it grow and scale around the world. And it is absolutely achieving the kind of potential I believed was out there.
And do you think that there, at some point, obviously, I mean, I see all, like you said, all in the retail stores. Is there a tipping point where you think that it becomes like it's more around 20%? Is there a tipping point where, all right, now the market is on its own rolling, and you have to, a lot of the campaigns we're doing now for in the plant-based arena has been awareness based. The fact of what it is and how it works. When do you think it's going to be something where everyone knows about it, and then they're going to just simply go, I want that because of quality or maybe climate change?
So a lot of that tip has already happened. I mean, the fact that, it really started when Beyond Meat was able to place our products in the meat section of stores. Previously those products had been relegated to the vegan freezer. So that's a big step. But obviously what's happening now is we're seeing expansion with major restaurant chains, and that helps elevate. It actually promotes trial when we can get into chain like Carl's Jr. or Dunkin', and people get to order these products just as they would a meat-based product. The next big crossover point will be when we can get the price parity or price advantage, right? So right now our products are more expensive, and that's just a matter of scale. But we're confident, and our CEO has said within 5 years we should be able to underprice animal-based products in at least a few categories. And then what happens if you've got a product that is delivering on taste, delivering on nutrition, has a price advantage? Then you have to ask the question, well, why does somebody want to have an animal-based product? I don't think humans have a fundamental need or desire to have to kill sentient beings to get nutrition or taste. And so as long as you're delivering on those, I think it becomes a really kind of fascinating existential question about how we live, how we interact with the planet. And of course, when we scale this around the planet, and there's whole, parts of continents that can't afford, from an environmental and resource perspective, can't afford to have domesticated livestock, why the stakes become very different in terms of how they think about their protein options.
No, that's a good segue into Eat the Change overarchingly, and one of the sub pieces is Plant Burger. From what I can, from what I've seen on the website, where I read about it, you basically wanted to make a marketplace, I believe, some sort of way for there to be less friction to be able to create these different companies. Tell us more about how the hope, maybe what the eventual Eat the Change kind of amalgamation will look like.
Sure, and actually I've got the Plant Burger logo behind me, which I love. It's actually, just to give you a fuller view of it, it's both a planet and a burger. And it came about, like a lot of the things I've gotten involved in, it kind of came about through serendipity. I was on a panel a few years ago with Spike Mendelsohn, this celebrity chef, one of the Top Chef winners. And I had brought him some burgers, Beyond Burgers, and he loved them. And I didn't know this, but his wife is vegan, and she was so excited about the burgers. He came back and said, we should launch a chain. And my family's been vegetarian, now vegan for 14 years. We'd always been frustrated with the options. And so I'm like, boy, if it means I can get, a great burger and feel like it's something we can enjoy, that just for selfish reasons, it's worth exploring. And so we set the first one up inside the Whole Foods in Silver Spring, Maryland. And it's just, done extremely well. And so we've rolled out now 4 more locations. We've got another one opening this month, which of course is rare given what's going on. Most restaurants aren't in an expansion mode. But we're having a lot of fun with it. And the idea is to democratize these options. The product, the plant burger is at $6.95, which, really isn't that expensive for a basic burger. We're going into neighborhoods that are not, I would say sort of the Tony suburban areas. We're going to all, we've got, let's see now, two locations in DC, and 2 locations in Maryland, 1 location up in Philadelphia. So we're really trying to make these products accessible. And it's just a really fun way to democratize plant-based protein.
Great. And with COVID happening, obviously, congrats on continuing to grow. Do you see maybe smaller footprints and more of a takeout angle, or what's you guys' POV?
Well, the way we've set it up, these are located inside Whole Foods, and I hadn't been in the restaurant business before, but I started to look at it, and this was before COVID. We decided to set it up this way. I had lunch with Spike and another co-founder. We were just talking about how this might work, and I start walking around downtown Bethesda, and I see all these restaurants that have gone out of business, others that are building out. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to go sign a 5-year lease, and of course that was wise at the time because these restaurants, they have to pay rent whether there's sales going on or not. And so, the arrangement we have with Whole Foods is a much more dynamic one where we pay a portion of the sales. And so if we have a good day, we'll pay more rent. If we have a bad day, we pay less rent. And, that basically means you've got you're not going to get stuck with a big bill that you can't cover. And so I feel like that's an evolution that's going to happen. Frankly, the whole restaurant model or even the whole real estate model is I think everyone understands is going to be going through some major challenges in the future, and certainly from a restaurant tourist perspective, just not sustainable.
I guess it's a weird balance. I'm just kind of thinking of product, is that you want to come across as accessible, that it's still a treat, it's delightful, it's it's burgers and shakes and fries. But are you pushing it as a health food, or as a healthier option to the other one?
Just it's a delicious burger, and it's funny because in fact we got nominated for one of the local radio stations is doing best burgers in DC, and Plant Burger got nominated, which is cool. I've gone to the restaurant before and talked to someone in line, and he was saying, "Oh, you guys should have Swiss cheese, with a burger." And I'm like, "Oh, well, we just haven't found a good plant-based Swiss cheese." He says, "Well, why does it have to be plant-based?" I'm like, "Oh, well, he didn't know it was all plant-based," which is great. That's great. There's truth in labeling. We don't claim anything isn't, what it is, but to have consumers just enjoy the product for what it is wonderful. And of course, big believers in, and there was just a study released this week about the benefits of plant-based meat over animal-based meat. So I do think it is healthier, but I also believe that's not the most effective way to sell that kind of offering.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the ultimate endorsement if people are walking in not knowing the difference. So congratulations on building an amazing burger. So I mean, let's bring it back to the group that is watching. One of our brand marketers are on. Personally, I myself have dabbled a bit. I'm in LA, so I think I have to. It's in the culture here. But
sure.
I'm still eating meat these days. For those that are on that are listening in, who don't actually live a plant-based lifestyle today, but are more interested in it, what kind of small steps do you recommend to bridge that gap? Is it your delicious burger? Is it certain types of products that got you from meat to no meat? What's that kind of gradient you suggest?
I've got to say it is so much easier today than it was 14 years ago. So 14 years ago, there was a real sacrifice. I mean, to move from a delicious, juicy burger from a cow to a frozen veggie burger that, as Stephen Colbert says, is a bar coaster soaked in MSG. That's a tough move. So to be able to swap today or to make the move from a, hamburger and or cow-based ground beef to the Beyond Beef I've seen people make it and not even know they were making it, meaning, someone in the kitchen cooked it, swapped it out and they didn't know. So there's a lot of different approaches. I mean, one way to do it is just to say, I'm going to go plant-based until dinner time, or I'm going to go plant-based on Mondays. What's striking to me is how, now that my family, we, as I said, just went vegan at the beginning of the year. We've been vegetarian for 13 years before that. But now that, we're not eating animal-based meat at all or any animal products, it's striking how easy it is. It just seems psychologically like there's this big barrier. And then you see the analogs or the substitutes, they're so much better than they ever were. I don't think people should feel the pressure you have to go all or nothing. It's just how do you integrate more into it? And so as an example, just last night, my family, it was taco night. We had the Beyond ground beef and everything else we had, except for the cheese was just what we would normally eat. And it was delicious. And people who joined us for that don't even realize that it's, plant-based the whole way. It just tastes great.
I love that because in my mind, that's like, so if I was to create content, it's consumption behavior of families, of people enjoying the product in some sort of relevant and relatable way. I'd be remiss to mention it because obviously influential matches talent brands and talented brands together. Have you guys engaged with celebrities or micro-influencers? How have you gotten out to the world?
It's been so fun. And, this is with Beyond Meat in particular, where we just got these amazing group of ambassadors who are true believers in the product. And they're not, by the way, they're not all uniformly vegan or vegetarian. I mean, one of my favorite introductions we did was with Snoop Dogg and Dunkin' Donuts. And he went in and dressed up, as an employee and started giving our breakfast, the Beyond Breakfast sausage patty to people. And we got a phenomenal response. And he, it's fun. We've had him over to the office several times and he just loves what we're doing. And he loves the whole plant-based approach. Obviously he has a wide variety of plants that he enjoys. And so it was just a really, I loved him as an ambassador because he's very authentic. And he's not polarizing in any way. People don't look at it and say, "Oh, I can't live that kind of lifestyle." And then we've also been really successful with athletes. There's a lot of really successful athletes who have gone plant-based, and someone like Chris Paul talks about how he has less inflammation. He actually, talked about how he dunked in the All-Star game and he just felt better than he had in a few years. So. It's wonderful. And also like DeAndre Hopkins from football. I mean, people who rely on their bodies to make a living and who, if they felt there was a sacrifice in going plant-based, just from a professional point of view, would not make that choice. And yet they have.
Yeah, I mean, as a consumer, I've watched the Tom Brady Netflix thing where it basically shows like comparison of blood with the plant-based versus non-plant-based. And I mean, again, it's very compelling. It seems as though it really does give you an edge. You should be going plant-based. Is that a concerted effort? Are you guys going into TV trying to product place as well as like just find certain avenues to get this in the culture?
We just launched a new ad campaign really this week, and it's basically called "What If," and talks about what if we thought about our diets differently, what if we thought about agriculture differently, animals differently, and then we say that's already happening, and so there is certainly an effort to make sure we steer that conversation, but there's so much also happening organically. So I'm sure a lot of the folks here have seen the movie Game Changers. It's a great movie that really talks about how people make changes in their diet and the athletes who benefit from that. And it wasn't Beyond Meat, we didn't sponsor it, but it's just a great way to show this kind of conversation is happening. We just this week, we had supported a study done by Stanford where they evaluated 36 people, and they basically for a period of time, they substituted plant-based in their diets, and then they went back and ate animal-based, and really found significant health advantages by being plant-based. And so it's great to be able to have a clinical trial, peer-reviewed, studies that verify there's benefits without the trade-offs. The other thing we've done, we sponsored a study at the University of Michigan, a life cycle analysis, which was also peer-reviewed and found that the Beyond Burger uses 99% less water, 93% less land compared to a beef burger. And so you hear those kind of statistics. It's such a, not like, oh, it's 10% better. It's so profound that, people have to, obviously with the discussion about climate change, people have to kind of think about, we think they have to sort of reflect on those differences and understand, how it connects to their dietary choices.
Yeah, because you were mentioning earlier about obviously the health benefits as an individual in your daily diet, but yeah, there's an existential issue here on the climate component. Do you see there being some sort of, is there a specific climate change organizations you work with? Is there political pacts you guys are trying to work with? It sounds like you guys could literally reverse some of the things that are happening right now that seem almost irreversible.
Well, we're trying, and so that's part of the effort around Eat the Change. And so Eat the Change is it's an umbrella we've created for this effort. And so we have a brand called Eat the Change we'll be launching early next year. But while we're waiting to get the brand off the ground, we have launched a nonprofit effort, and we've just this week announced the second wave of grants. We gave out about $335,000 to 20 different partners around the country, and they're doing all types of interesting things. Some are community-based efforts to help expand access to planet-friendly foods. And others are national efforts. One of my favorite grantees is a woman who's launched, Tracy McWhorter launched a program that's an initiative called 10,000 Black Vegan Women. And she's trying to recruit 10,000 women, Black women, to become vegan. And so she's more than halfway there, which is neat. Another one is a product called Supermarket, and it's in South LA. And they're trying to set up a vegan organic grocery store, to address the food desert issue and to expand access to healthier food.
That's great. Well, I know we're getting kind of coming up pretty close to the edge with the Q&A piece, but so this has been an amazing kind of journey of obviously how your career turned into was now obviously activism plus entrepreneurship. Is there any principles from your time at Beyond Meat or any of the places you've been that you think that if I'm a brand marketer and I either have the ability to start something or I'm about to start something initiative that is altruistic in nature, whether it's climate change or otherwise, how do you basically marry those two, entrepreneurship plus activism and altruism?
A good way I think to look at it is look and see what the nonprofit activists are doing, right? So if there's a cause that nonprofits are working toward, it highlights a market inefficiency. And so, we saw obviously at Beyond Meat, you look at, there's groups like PETA, which have campaigns trying to get people to eat more plant-based diets. And okay, that's fine. There's a role for that for sure. But on the one hand, if you tell everyone to have plant-based diets and then they go buy a veggie burger and it tastes terrible, you lost them. So just as much as you need that activist, you need the for-profit company to be able to say, here's a burger that tastes delicious, that meets all the nutritional and dietary needs you want. And, by the way, it also is plant-based. And so, I think it's great when you can marry nonprofit activism or causes with for-profit, commercial marketplace opportunities.
Well, I think everyone's smarter for listening to you today. Before we end that, let's get to the Q&A. So a tremendous number of questions that have popped up. So let's dive in if you're good.
Sure, I'm happy to.
So I think this might be a lob up or a softball question to you, but obviously feel free to do it. So do you believe that a major vegan QSR chain will emerge in the next 5 years? I guess besides you, is that going to be kind of a...
Well, we wouldn't have launched Plant Burger if we didn't think we could become that kind of chain. I'll just say we never think. I'm not interested in thinking small when I launch anything. There is a role for small, but that's not the role I like to play.
Got it. Cool. Next is from Joseph. Have you thought about partnering with like-minded brands in the food, beverage, or other categories from a messaging or content creation space? And I guess the person says, PETA aside, as you're talking about that right now. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, certainly there is a lot the plant-based food companies do together. We work on several initiatives. Sometimes they're around labeling, federal, there's federal times where there's attempts to try to constrain how we talk about our ingredients, and so we work together with them. There's also some marketing things. We had a called Plant-Based Party online and sort of helped share, what we're selling and how we sell it. And then, what's fun about Plant Burger, the restaurant, is of course it has Beyond Meat on the menu, but we also work with Follow Your Heart on our cheese, and we're interested in sort of having a collection of different plant-based companies to highlight them as well.
Beautiful. And then Isabel asked, what trends in consumer behavior are of particular importance to you and basically in your division and in your vertical of plant-based?
Well,
Is it eating from home? Is it obviously their interest in health? Like, I guess how are you navigating consumer behaviors?
yeah, I think that it is, there's an evolution going on for sure right now. People are really reconsidering a lot of the choices they've made around the way they live, and certainly diet is part of that. And I think even what we're seeing around the COVID, the way it happened, I think it helped people understand that when we make decisions, they have impacts, and it can be a decision someone made in China has an impact on us. And so I think there is going to be a continued trend toward a feeling of connectedness. And that's something we're really trying to connect. We'll be speaking to at Eat the Change is helping, and obviously the name itself, it's a call to action. It's taking, I was gonna say taking matters into your own hands, but taking matters into your own mouth, and really making sure that the choices you make resonate with your concerns and your environmental concerns.
And I love to think about what your strategy is from a location perspective, because you're Maryland-based. You're obviously kind of starting there and going out to the world.
Yeah.
Is the HQ always to be in Maryland? Do you plan on going to other? I guess what's the because Maryland's the first place you think of usually.
No, it's not. It's just because that's where I live. It is I started everything here because I was working at Calvert, which used to be based in Maryland. It's no longer based here, but a socially conscious mutual fund company. And I started Honest Tea out of my house. And when I announced I was leaving Honest Tea at the end of last year, Coke moved the Honest Tea office down to Atlanta, and so I took over the lease. And so it's the same office that Honest Tea was in for the past 13 years. Of course, Beyond Meat is based in LA, but for me, Maryland, aside from the fact that it's home, works as a place to launch. It is a highly conscious community, and it's certainly, sort of commuter friendly and education friendly. So I'm able to access great talent here, and I love the fact that it's an authentic. It's where we're based. It's where we're launching. It's somebody. I remember early on when I was launching Honest Tea, I had a fancy investor come in and say, "Well, why don't you set up a PO box in Vermont or New Hampshire so it can seem more authentic?" I said, how is it more authentic to have a PO box and not a business space there? So we're here, and I also like the fact that while it's certainly, I say, an educated place, it's not an unreal environment, And so launching in Silver Spring, which is an extremely mixed neighborhood, and before the whole coronavirus hit, we were doing a much higher percentage in cash receipts at that restaurant, which just shows you how economically diverse that community is. So that's a good marker that we're not just going to the wealthy suburbs.
That makes sense. And I think the last question here is from Mike Russell, and I think from Phyllis, I think it's more brand Beyond Meat kind of category reference. How do you see the growth of the category and entrance from larger CPG companies, e.g. via acquisition, impacting how you go to market, your advertising, your distribution, your supply chains, your pricing? You have all these people see the light. They need to jump in this market for they miss. What's that going to do to you guys? Is that good or is that bad? What's happened?
It's good. We're all growing the category together. We're at the very early stages of this. I mean, I can foresee a time where, let's talk about grandchildren, because that will give you the distance, but I think grandchildren will be asking, wait, how did you guys have a whole diet based on this process of raising and slaughtering billions of sentient creatures, and that was the center of your diet? I mean, literally just thinking totally differently about meat. And so we're just at the very early stages, and it'll be interesting for us to say, I was around when the first, I mean, obviously we weren't around for the first veggie burgers, but we're certainly around for the time when veggie burgers crossed over into plant-based protein. And so, this is going to expand into all categories of animal-based analogs. It's going to be prevalent. Every restaurant will have it, not just in the, here's the heart healthy section or in the veggie section. It's going to be right in the middle of the menu. And so, yeah, big companies are coming in, and here's what's been exciting to see is that being a small company when we started Beyond Meat did not constrain us from growing. And now, we're certainly not as big as these other competitors entering the space, but size doesn't give people, automatic success. I've seen that obviously in the beverage industry as well. And so as long as companies can keep innovating and keep improving, and that's obviously something all of, not all, but a lot of the certainly Beyond Meat is committed to continuous improvement, continuous challenging, when we say going beyond, then we're going to have a competitive spot. And we talk about companies who are bringing out products that are like ours, but we say they're really chasing our ghost because we're already on to the next innovation. That's how it has to be. It has to be a rapid and relentless cycle of innovation to stay ahead.
That's great. One kind of add on to that. So with all that being said, we're talking about the consumer market, obviously going to stores and buying this. Is it an initiative either from Eat the Change or from Beyond to go to the schools, the places where obviously people are growing up and thinking their habits? It sounds like that would be a great place to educate early on. Yeah,
it's certainly to democratize what we're doing. Just today, in fact, Eat the Change, Beyond Meat announced an initiative, a partnership with EverFi to actually create learning opportunities around the role diet plays. And that's obviously something we appreciate as well. So, the real chance to get to schools will happen when you can get pricing to be competitive. But that, as I said, is something we've got our sights on.
I wanted to say, I wanted to say I grew up in Maryland, in Germantown, so not too far away. And my family has always been a fan of Honest Tea. We had it growing up so much, and I'm back here for a few weeks, so I'm definitely going to have to come by Plant Burger.
Oh yeah,
one of the new burgers.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for joining us for such a great final session. Loved hearing all your stories, Seth. You have such amazing endeavors that you've been working on to help fight climate change and, pursue a plant-based diet for the world. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Well, special thank you to all of our great speakers who joined us today and all of our brand marketers who've joined in our audience. I know I personally took so much from each of the sessions, and we hope you all will join us again for our next Brand Innovators Livecast on the future of media, which will be next Tuesday, August 18th. We'll be featuring some amazing senior marketers from Uber, Overstock.com, Jib Jab, Samba, and more. Thank you for joining, everyone, and we hope to see you again soon.